There's something almost invisible about it. You don't notice it at first. It doesn't happen all at once. You're just being who you're supposed to be. You show up, you help, you listen. You clean up the messes, sometimes emotional, sometimes physical. You take care of things, you hold people together, you put yourself second, third, last, and it doesn't feel wrong. In fact, it feels like love. For years, I lived like that. I was always there for everyone except me. I was the dependable one, the strong one, the calm voice when things fell apart. I was the one they turned to, leaned on, asked for help from again and again, and I didn't resent it. I thought it was what made me good, what made me worthy, what made me matter, but somewhere along the way, quietly, slowly, I started disappearing. Not physically, I was still in the room, still doing the things, still answering the calls. But something inside me had gone quiet. I couldn't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to, not because it was expected, not because it was practical, not because someone else needed me to, just because it made me feel alive. And when I tried to ask myself what I wanted, I didn't know. I'd spent so many years putting other people first that I forgot what it felt like to even consider myself. I forgot how to check in with my own heart. Those were the silent years, not because there wasn't noise around me, but because I had gone silent with myself. I had stopped listening to my own needs, stopped hearing my own voice, stopped recognizing the person I was outside of the roles I played. People saw me as solid, stable, always composed, and in some ways I was, but inside I was tired. Not just physically, but soul-deep tired. A kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. A kind of tired that came from being everything for everyone and nothing for myself. I thought that was just what aging felt like. But now I know it wasn't age, it was absence. An absence of self. And that's the truth so many of us carry in silence. We love deeply, we give freely, we serve without complaint. Until one day we look in the mirror and we don't recognize who's looking back. That's where my story begins. Not in a crisis, not in a breakdown, just in a quiet, persistent ache. A knowing I could no longer ignore. I had taken care of everyone except the one person who needed me most, me. There's a cost to disappearing. Even if no one sees you go, you don't fall apart in some dramatic way. You don't shout, you don't slam doors, you just slowly begin to vanish. Not from the world, but from yourself. It starts with the little things. You stop asking yourself what you want for dinner because it's easier to just make what everyone else likes. You stop speaking up when something bothers you because it feels easier to stay quiet. You stop spending time on things that light you up because it feels selfish when there's always something more urgent to do. You stop choosing you. And after a while, you don't even notice you're gone. Your life is full, but you feel empty. You smile, but it feels practiced. You give, but it's not joyful anymore. You're surrounded, but you feel unseen. That's what it costs. You lose your voice not because it was taken from you, but because you handed it over in tiny, quiet pieces. You lose your energy not just from physical fatigue, but from emotional erasure. You lose your sense of self not all at once, but in 1,000 unnoticed moments. And no one sees it because you still show up, you still function. You still perform the role, but inside you're running on fumes. You forget what makes you laugh. You forget what it feels like to be surprised, to be moved, to be inspired. You forget that you once had dreams, opinions, rhythms of your own. You become someone who exists, but no longer lives. And what makes it harder is that people will praise you for it. They'll call you strong, selfless, unshakable. They'll thank you for always being there, for always saying yes, for never making it about you, and a part of you will feel proud. But another part, buried so deep you almost forget it's there, will whisper, "But what about me?" That voice used to be loud, then it became a whisper. And eventually silence, but it never truly left, because the soul doesn't forget itself, even when we do. And when we neglect ourselves long enough, it shows up. In the fatigue that won't go away. In the quiet sadness that follows us into every room. In the resentment we try to hide with fake smiles. In the sharpness that appears in our voice when we're stretched too thin. These are the signs. The body begins to carry what the heart was never allowed to say. And the truth is, when you take care of everyone else and not yourself, you don't just lose balance. You lose access to the very part of you that makes your love sustainable. Because love given from depletion isn't love. It's survival, and survival always has a cost. Some of us paid for it with our health, some with our joy. Some with relationships that never truly knew who we were beneath all the roles. And the longer we disappear from ourselves, the harder it becomes to find our way back. But here's the good news. The moment we name the cost, we begin to reclaim the value. The moment we admit what's been lost, we open the door to what could still be found. That quiet voice inside, the one that asks, "But what about me?" It isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's the part of you that refuses to be erased. It's the part of you still waiting to be chosen by you. It didn't happen all at once. No grand collapse, no public breakdown, just a quiet moment when I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I was standing in the kitchen, it was late, the house was quiet, everyone had gone to bed. The lights were off except for one above the sink. I was washing a dish I didn't even use, and suddenly something inside me just stopped. Not my body, not my breath, but something deeper. Like a truth that had been waiting for years finally stood up and said, "You're tired, and not just from today, you're tired from a lifetime." I froze not because I didn't believe it, but because I did, every word. I was tired of putting myself last, tired of apologizing for needing space, tired of performing strength when all I wanted was to be held, understood, or just left alone. I was tired of pretending I didn't mind. Tired of saying I'm fine when I was anything but, tired of being needed but never really seen. It wasn't one moment that broke me. It was 1,000 small ones. 1,000 times I bit my tongue. 1,000 times I stayed quiet. 1,000 times I said yes when everything inside me whispered no. I'd spent my whole life showing up for others, but when I asked myself, when was the last time someone asked how I was really doing? I couldn't remember. And maybe that's what hurt most. Not that others had forgotten me, but that I had abandoned myself, gently, repeatedly, without protest. I had walked myself to the edge of exhaustion and stood there smiling just so everyone else could feel safe. But that night, in that still kitchen, I knew something had to change. I didn't want to disappear anymore. Not slowly, not quietly, not politely. I didn't want to be the background character in my own life, and I wasn't angry. I wasn't dramatic. I was just done. Done shrinking, done deferring, done pretending I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what came next. But I knew this, I couldn't keep doing life this way. Because something inside me had finally whispered loud enough to be heard. I miss me. And I realized if I wanted to find myself again, if I wanted to stop fading into the needs of others, I'd have to do something I'd never truly done. Choose myself not in a selfish, spiteful way, not in rebellion or resentment, but in quiet, steady, necessary love. The kind of love I had poured into everyone else. It was time to pour it back into me. That was my breaking point. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a life that would finally include me. The hardest part wasn't realizing I'd lost myself. It was learning how to come back. I'd spent so many years being what others needed, that I no longer knew how to be what I needed. It didn't come with some big transformation. There was no aha moment, no grand declaration. Just a small, steady voice inside that said, "Start here, start small, but start." So I did. I started by waking up 10 minutes earlier. Not to be productive, but to be quiet. To sit with a cup of tea and ask myself, how are you really feeling today? Most days I didn't have an answer, but I kept asking. I started saying no. Gently, without over-explaining. I let people be uncomfortable with my boundaries, because for once I wasn't willing to abandon myself to avoid disappointing them. I started walking again, not to lose weight, not to reach a goal, but to feel my body move. To breathe fresh air, to remember I was still here, I started listening to music I used to love. I picked up old books. I wrote in a notebook with no plan, just thoughts, memories, feelings. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to return. It felt strange at first, like speaking a language I hadn't used in years, like trying to remember the lyrics to a song I once knew by heart. But underneath the discomfort, there was something soft, something familiar, something real. I didn't need to reinvent myself. I didn't need to be someone new. I just needed to be with myself as I was. No fixing, no editing, no proving. Just presence. Some days I felt guilty. The old voices would creep in. "Oh, you should be helping someone. Oh, you're being selfish. Other people have it harder." But I kept going. Because I knew this wasn't about choosing myself instead of others. It was about choosing myself alongside them. It was about realizing that my needs weren't a burden. They were part of what made me human. And I noticed something else too. The more I showed up for myself, the more present I became with others, the more honest I was about my limits, the deeper my relationships became, the more I listened to my own voice. The less I resented the noise around me because I wasn't pouring from an empty cup anymore. I wasn't giving out of guilt or habit. I was giving from fullness, from clarity. From love that included me. Coming back to myself wasn't a straight line. Some days I still felt lost. Some days I slipped back into old patterns, but now I had something I never had before: awareness, compassion, and the courage to keep choosing myself. Again and again, as many times as it takes, because I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be real, and real feels like peace. Real feels like coming home. I used to think self-care was selfish. I used to think taking time for myself meant I was neglecting someone else. That if I wasn't doing, fixing, helping, holding, it meant I wasn't enough. But now I see it differently. I see it with softer eyes, wiser ones. Because I've learned something that took me almost a lifetime to understand. Taking care of myself doesn't take love away from others. It allows me to love them from a place that's whole. I don't want to vanish into the background of my own life anymore. I want a life that includes me, not as an afterthought, not as a reward when everything else is done, but as a living, breathing presence at the center of my days. Now I ask myself what I need, and I actually listen. Now I say no when something drains me without apology. Now I slow down, not because I've given up, but because I've finally learned that peace moves at a different pace. I still care for people, I still give, still show up. But I do it differently now. I no longer give from depletion, I give from overflow. And that's only possible because I finally started pouring into myself. I've redefined what strength means. It's not being unbreakable, it's being honest about what hurts. I've redefined what love means. It's not sacrificing yourself to be everything for everyone. It's standing fully in who you are and letting others meet you there. This new life I'm building doesn't look flashy. It's quiet, simple, slow, but it's real. It has space for rest, for creativity, for stillness, for joy that doesn't need to be earned. It has space for me. And I want to say this from one heart to another: you don't have to wait until you're burned out or broken or lost to begin again. You don't have to keep proving your worth through exhaustion. You don't have to keep disappearing just to keep others comfortable. You deserve a life that includes you, and you are allowed, fully allowed, to build it starting now. No matter how long it's been, no matter who forgot to ask how you feel, no matter how good you've become at hiding what you need. Today can be the beginning, not of some perfect new version of you, but of the truest version. The kind that's been waiting underneath everything else. So here I am, still learning, still stumbling, but finally showing up for myself, because I took care of everyone. And now I'm learning to take care of me.